Today we're going to be covering hunting and getting permission specifically on private land. Right now there's a big push for the public land guys, which is awesome. If you hunt a lot of public land, kill big deer on public land, that's super cool. But if you're like us, you might be in an area where there's not really a lot of options as far as public land goes, and there's more and more guys that are starting to lease. So if you don't own land, knocking on doors is pretty much your only option, and we've been doing that our whole lives and have hunted private land, permission granted properties for years and years. So we're going to kind of break down today how we go about doing that, and hopefully you can get some advice and takeaways from this. So we learned a lot of this from our dad. Growing up, we didn't own land at the time. He owns land now, and I never even thought about public land when I was young growing up.
No, we didn't. I mean, we knew that there was some, but we didn't hunt public land until we started turkey hunting it 2014.
Which we're still not in a public or land-rich environment anyhow. So it's not like you grew up where there's thousands of acres of public land around you where you're like, why not? Right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's...
So what? Break that down. Around us, let's say within 50 square miles, how many acres of public land total do you think there are? In Clear Fork's like 100?
Yeah.
We're talking like less than 1,000 total acres of public land within a 50 square mile radius of where we currently live.
Maybe Mohican you could throw in there, but still, yeah, not a lot of options. So we resorted to knocking on doors, and I think a good approach to do that is kind of like a sales approach. The more people you talk to, the more doors you knock on, the more farms you seek out, the more you're going to get. If you go out there, this is at least how I do it. If you go out there and only plan to talk to 2 people, your odds of getting permission probably aren't as good if you go talk to 15, just from a sheer number standpoint. So I think a lot of times and Easton's really good about the map aspect. I suck at looking at maps, but if you can look at a map and find an area that you want to target, you can really kind of easily map out what doors you want to knock on, who lives where, and if you get one, sometimes it can even lead to another. I know where we do a lot of our turkey hunting, we had permission on the neighboring property, and he was like, hey, you should go ask the guy next door, he'd probably let you, and now we've killed I don't know how many turkeys there.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that with deer too. You get one permission on a property and they kind of point you in another direction as well, like, hey, there's another guy who has a problem, he's a farmer and has a problem with deer or whatever, and he'll kind of send you to another spot where you might be able to pick up another.
Well, the other thing about that too is, at least in areas that like where we're at, it's relatively rural. We don't have a giant population of people. So landowners with any amount of wooded acres probably have been asked for hunting permission before. And so they've been through the routine. Either they're going to let you or they know who in the area will let you. And so that's exactly what Easton's talking about.
Yeah.
So,
and to start off, it'll be easier. If you're new to this and you want to try to venture out and get some more properties under your belt, there's so many apps out there now, whether it's OnX or HuntStand. I know there's other ones. You can just get on even like the auditor's website or Google Earth.
Just go to your county auditor's page and they'll have landowner, they'll have acreage, they'll have tillable, all of that sort of information will be on the county auditor's website.
And pick a relatively small block so you're not driving all over the county, and just kind of narrow your search to there. I know we go out and drive around a lot and look for deer this time of year in bean fields, and that's how we get a lot of permission. If we see a field that has some big deer in it, we're automatically on the maps looking who owns big chunks of land, and then going after that to knock on those doors. That's how we hunted Houdini, the giant 200-inch deer. Exactly that process.
That's where I start. I don't start with the maps. You can, but typically we start by putting some miles on the truck, driving around, finding these areas that have a lot of deer or turkeys or whatever, and then going to the maps and figuring out who the landowner is, and kind of, you can even from there kind of check out the surrounding areas, look for bigger blocks of woods or...
For sure.
Well, something else too that I think a lot of people are sometimes overlooking is they'll find a bean field in their area, and they'll, like you talked about before we started even chatting about this discussion, people will go and sit over a bean field and wait to see if deer come out. I'm like, just take the long way home from work and see if there's deer out in the field. You don't need to go and like purposefully do this. If you're a hunter like we are, you drive past the bean field and there's a deer in it, you're going to see it whether or not you're looking for that deer.
You're probably going to put your four-ways on and stop.
Yeah, right. So it doesn't have to be a huge ordeal or a giant 3-hour time suck in an evening. Just going in a couple extra miles out of your way is a good place to start.
The number of times I've rolled my window down and just screamed out the window so they all put their heads up. All right, no bucks. Keep doing 55 down the highway.
Exactly. Honk so they pick their heads. Yep. So after you've established where you want to search or want to knock on doors and want to get permission, I think the next important thing to think about is when you're going to go ask and your presentation when you ask. As far as when you go, you obviously want to go when those people are going to be home. So I don't recommend going in the middle of a week, during working hours. If you go at 12 o'clock on a Wednesday, they're probably at work. So you want to maximize your time. I always recommend going in the evenings or on weekends. If
Saturday mornings are good.
If you're knocking on farmers, like legitimate farmers who have equipment and cattle and crops, it might be tougher to get a hold of them, at their house, but the more times you try, eventually you'll run into each other. But yeah, go during times where you're probably going to catch somebody at home. I like going later in the evening so they're hopefully done eating dinner and you're not interrupting family time.
Yeah. Be mindful of when you're going, even if you know they're probably going to be home. Yep. Don't try to go smack in the middle of when they're more than likely eating dinner with their family, or on Sundays when they're, trying to spend time. Yeah, or sleeping or at church. We've done that a time or two. But
that's all part of the presentation aspect of this.
Yeah, be courteous and think about, what they might be doing. And
I think that is quite possibly one of the most, I don't think the most important. We'll get to what I think the most important step is, but the presentation is huge. I've seen guys do it before. They might work like a construction job or a landscaping job, and they'll like go after work with their cut off and their dirty jeans. That's their first impression of the type of person you are. So when you're out there asking to hunt, you got to remember when they first meet you and you shake their hand, whatever they're seeing at that point in time is what they expect you're going to be like on their property.
Well, and this is not to say that people who work construction and are dirty after their job.
Not at all.
You have to be mindful that people do. I mean, first impressions do make a big difference.
Right.
And you could be the nicest guy on earth, but if you've got an arm sleeve tattoo and you come in and your jeans are ripped, it doesn't matter what your vocabulary is like. They've already assumed what kind of person you are just by what they see.
Right. Yeah, and that was not at all a knock to anyone. What I was getting at is they might think this guy didn't even take, depending on the person, this guy didn't even take the time to, clean up before he came to my home where I live. So if you can throw on a nice pair of jeans and a t-shirt, hat, whatever, just so you don't look, super ratty and smelly or whatever, I think it goes a long way, because they say, oh, this is a nice, clean-cut gentleman or nice-looking girl that's, well put together, and they might be more likely to trust somebody like that versus the next guy.
Yep.
So, and then from there, I think really you need to have a clear objective when you're going to knock on doors. And we'll give an example of this, but we've run into this and made a mistake in this regard. Be very clear on what you want to do, whether it's I just want to bow hunt, I just want to gun hunt, I just want to turkey hunt, I want to hunt only on the weekends. You have another guy hunting, I only want to hunt this side of the farm. I think the more clear and detailed you are about that, the better. And the example I'm going to use is, and I never thought this would be a problem, but we film obviously our hunts. So you may want to bring up, if you do the same thing, that you film while you're out there, because we lost permission this year on summer we'd been hunting for years because the landowner found out we filmed our hunts. I never in a million years would have thought that would be a problem, but it ended up being one. So learn from our mistakes, and if that's something you're going to be doing, whether it's running 10 trail cameras, whatever, just give them details of what you plan to do on their land so there's no miscommunication.
I think you can take baby steps too. You don't have to go in there and be like, I'm going to come in here, I'm going to be here every single day. Of course, that's what we want to do. I'm going to be in here every single day. I'm going to be hunting with, all these crazy guns and bows and whatever. I started on one of the properties that I deer hunt. I started we want to bow hunt. We're only going to be here a couple days a week, all that. And then you kind of can each year progress a little bit more and more.
Or even step it back and just do like, hey, can I walk your property and look for deer antlers? Some people don't even know that you can do that. So you educate them on something that's cool. You find something, you've got another thing to talk about, and now you've got your foot in the door at a property where
you'll build trust with the landowner. They'll kind of realize, and the more you talk to them and see them around their property, you kind of build a little bit of a relationship with them, and they get to know your character and everything. And then from there, they might be more willing to let you gun hunt this year, or walk it a little bit more, whatever it is. But
well, the other thing that does too is if you're specific about it, it tells the landowner two things. One, it tells them that you're thoughtful because you actually tried to think into the future about how your relationship with them and their property is going to go. And second, it gives them an idea of how often you are going to be there. If you go up to somebody and you say, I want blanket hunting permission, and you don't specify anything, they're going to think, well, he's going to crow hunt in the summertime, he's going to groundhog hunt, he's going to squirrel hunt, he's going to deer hunt, he's going to turkey hunt, he's going to be here all the time. So then why do I own private land? And so being specific about some of those things can give them some added peace of mind just about when you're going to be there and when they can expect to see other vehicles driving up the lane and things like that. So,
absolutely. And that brings us to the next topic, I think. We always, I don't know that you legally have to do this in Ohio, and I'm not sure for other states. I have no idea. But we try to always carry written permission slips with us. You can get those printed off on the DNR website, or you can even just Google like Ohio hunting permission slip. And within that, it kind of keeps both parties, I don't want to say safe.
Covered. It's a contract.
Yeah, essentially covers.
But within that, Jake mentioned vehicle. We always try to state like what vehicles will be in, and I always keep a copy and put it in my window when I go to hunt, so that if they forget or whatever, they see it and they'll come, oh, that's Nick, Easton, and Jake, whatever, no big deal, and then they'll get used to that.
That's happened to us before too, where we've gone and hunted a property and we did put it in the windshield, right?
I think
that
so.
time.
Yeah, I know.
A neighbor or somebody, it was the person living in the house on that property, saw a truck they didn't know drive up. They called the police. The police were down there, and we had to sort all that out, even though we did have permission. The landowner wasn't right there to see it, but we had all the documentation to prove that, yes, we were supposed to be here, we're allowed to be there, we weren't breaking any laws or any rules, and that we're in the right. So
I don't necessarily think, in Ohio at least, according to my understanding, that is absolutely a must.
You don't have to.
Right. From my understanding, it does kind of cover each other, and like you said, it saves a lot of headaches. Yep. So if one little step to have you sign it, write a little bit of information down, it saves a lot of hassle. But in the case where maybe they forget they ever gave you permission, like there's some people that hunt a property they got permission on 5 years ago and never speak to that landowner again.
They got permission one time and they just assume it's
and then
infinitely.
And then they come back to hunt it, and that landowner doesn't recognize them or their car or remember they ever gave them permission. If they were to call the game warden and say, hey, this guy doesn't have permission, that's on you, and you will be in trouble because you don't have that written piece of paper that says, signed by that landowner.
Well, and this is a legal matter too, because the burden of proof is on you to prove that you still maintain permission on that property. It's not up to the landowner to call you and track you down to say, hey, I decided I don't want you to be here anymore. It's up to you to make sure that you have proof that you're allowed to be there. So the documentation definitely helps.
Correct.
Absolutely.
The other thing that does too, which I think this is a side note, but if you provide a sheet of paper, it has some legalese on it that it shows what you're allowed to do, when you're allowed to do it. It kind of covers some liability if you were to get injured on that property to not sue the landowner should you fall out of your tree stand. Because obviously it's not the landowner's fault that you did that. But some landowners that we've encountered are a little bit weary of that. They don't want you there because what if you get hurt and you sue me and you take my property? And so having a sheet of paper may help.
Sometimes that's kind of makes or breaks the deal. Like these people that have never let anyone hunt, and then they find out here's this piece of paper that's going to cover me. Maybe that's what they were riding the fence about is, am I going to be in trouble if you get hurt on my property? And sometimes that could potentially make or break your deal.
Well, and again, it shows that you're considering those things, which is then you being considerate to the landowner and to their well-being as a property owner and their property rights when you do that kind of stuff. So
Absolutely.
The next thing I wanted to talk about on this topic is maybe a little bit strange, but like handling
rejections.
Objections or rejections, yeah. So if you go and knock on somebody's door and they may, before they get to know you, and I had this just happen this year in Michigan. I knocked on a door. Gentleman was a big deer hunter. Initially said, no, man, sorry. I think a lot of people would have said, okay, no problem, and turned around and walked away. But that objection he gave me of, no, I hunt and I let some other guys hunt, I came back with, well, I'm from a different state. I came here from Ohio. I'm only here for 2 days, and I just want to turkey hunt. He did a 180 and said, oh, I didn't know you were just going to be here for a couple days. Yeah, those guys aren't going to be hunting. I don't turkey hunt. Have at it. So don't be afraid. I mean, be respectful, but if they tell you no right off the rip, you can keep the conversation going, and don't be afraid to kind of handle that objection and come back in a polite and respectful manner.
Don't be defensive. Don't get standoffish.
Right.
But
you never know what that could turn into. And even if you don't get, just because you don't have permission to hunt there today, doesn't mean you won't next year. Like, if you keep that relationship positive and are persistent in a way, we've gotten permission on places that were initial no's, and then, now we're able to hunt it. So just something to keep in mind. I think some people can get really discouraged. They might have this great plan like we talked about, and they're going to go knock on 10 doors, and they go to the first one and they say no, and they just turn around and walk away, and they're like deflated. Go on to the next one. You never know what's going to be behind the next door and the next farm. It could be a 200-incher. So.
This goes back to your original point, which was knock on and talk to as many people as you can, because let's say, just ballparking, you have a 2% success rate. If you knock on 10 doors, you're not going to get that 2% success rate. You got to knock on 100 doors, and then 2 people may grant you permission. That's an estimated number. I have no idea what that actually is, but there's to prove your odds. The more doors you knock on, the likelihood that somebody is going to say yes is a lot higher.
Yep, absolutely. Now, earlier we talked about the most important phase in this, and I think it's this: maintaining the property you get permission on and how to do that. And our dad taught us this from a young age. Any property we got permission on, as soon as the season ended, we took them a customized gift basket with a card thanking them straight to their door. And I think that has gone such a long way for keeping and maintaining that relationship. I think a lot of guys, like Easton said, knock on a door, they get permission, that's it. Next year they go hunt it again. They think they still have permission. That's it. Next year they go and hunt it again. It's basically like, I think you used the analogy during turkey season about hunters just wanting to take. It's like, I got what I wanted. No big deal. You got to remember that they don't have to let you hunt on their land.
Nope.
And they did. So whether you saw 100 deer or you saw 0 deer or you killed your biggest buck or you didn't even see a buck, you needed to take them something. It doesn't have to be a gift basket. It can be a gift. It can be just a simple thank you card. Yeah. Or just going there and just like saying, hey, thank you so much. I want to let you know how much I appreciate this. Some gesture to kind of tie the bow on that season, and you'll be right back in the next year.
It sets you apart too. If you're hunting a farm with multiple different hunters, more than likely the other people aren't doing that.
No way.
I would venture to say. So when you show your appreciation, your gratitude for that landowner, and say, hey, I want to give you this, thank you, that's setting you apart. And that may make or break, they may decide, I don't know how I feel about letting people hunt here anymore.
Yeah.
They may be a little more likely to say, you know what, he was always good to us, we'll let him stay.
Absolutely. It doesn't even have to be that either. I know some of the farms we've helped them with unloading hay wagons or
just a gesture
shooting
of goodwill
at their farm. Anything you can do to help them out and show them you truly appreciate the gesture they're giving you for letting you traipse around their land, because they surely didn't have to do that. I think goes a long, long way, and we've been able to hunt a lot of properties for some of them decades because we did those things, where otherwise I don't know that be the case.
Like you said, it doesn't have to be a tangible material gift. It could be just time. Just your time.
Absolutely.
It's even a simple conversation like, hey, this is what I saw. I had a blast. Thanks so much. Simple things like that.
Some people just want to talk.
Yeah, we used to take up the road here, a guy that used to let us turkey hunt, we would just take him like a picture of a turkey we shot there, and he loved it. Like, oh, cool, that's awesome that you shot this on my property.
Well, and for us, we started the conversation, it's common knowledge now, if you are involved in the hunting community online in any way, shape, or form, that leasing is big, owning giant chunks of private land is big, and public land is big. And for us, we've never leased a property. We've always only ever hunted either land that we were lucky enough to own or property we gained on permission. And I would much rather build a relationship with a human being and spend $40 or $50 on a really nice gift basket to say thank you than spend $50 to $100 an acre to lease land.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It goes a long way. People think you have to lease now. Everyone's leasing. Oh, you got to lease land. And it's like, that's not true at all. You can get big deer in suburbs. Just You just got to ask.
There's competition no matter what you're doing. If you're public land hunting, there's competition with other hunters.
Yep.
If you're leasing, there's competition to find the right piece and lease it before someone else does. But at the same time, with permission, there's competition.
Because you're not the only one that
More
asked.
than likely, if you're seeing deer there or turkeys there, you're not the only person to ask.
Yep.
So it comes down, no matter what you're hunting, it's all competitive. So setting yourself apart, doing the right things, being respectful and courteous, that may be what sets you apart from the rest of the crowd.
Absolutely.
Well, and the other, maybe to close too, the old adage of it's who you know that really counts. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I think for hunting specifically, it's how you know them that makes the biggest difference. Because if you know them on a personal level because you had conversations with them and you exchanged gifts and things like that, it goes a long way, as opposed to someone who just knocked on a door from work, maybe not dressed the best and dirty after a long, hard day's work. It gives a different impression.
Yeah.
Those things make a big difference.
Absolutely. So that, I think, is a good way to wrap it up. Moral of the story, don't be afraid to go talk to people. You never know, like I said, what's behind that door. You might build a lifelong relationship, end up in his will, and get the property.
You might get free broadheads. You might get to see giant deer on the wall.
Or it could be an anti that absolutely hates you and tells you to get the heck off their property. But you never know until you try.
Exactly. Either way, get out there and do it. And we hope, if you're somebody that maybe wants to expand the amount of property they hunt, we hope this can help you out. If you don't have a lot of public around you, or there's guys that own a lot and they hunt, whatever the case may be. And if you have any questions that pertain to what we talked about today, obviously feel free to shoot us a message or drop us a comment, and we'd be more than happy to talk about it further. So thank you guys for watching. Hunting, whether it's deer hunting, turkey hunting, you name it. But right now, on this episode, we want to talk about private land and gaining permission to hunt private.
Just keep on. When you guys start, I hate starting. I feel like I sound like a jack.
You do.
All right.